after letter A, where you have where I mark the fourth finger and then to the third finger on B. That's perfectly doable. Another alternative would be going to 2 instead of 3. That way you don't have to fully shift into a new position. You can just sort of, and then just kind of replace 1 with 2. And technically, it's possible to also bar the first finger across, and so that's one more possibility. So I would just say 1 or 2 on the B there instead of 3. That's the fingering I gave you there with the 2 to the 3 is certainly possible, but also because of the articulation of the staccatos, and we typically will do this a little bit off the string, then you can actually go 1-1 there. So you could just do 4-2-1 and then shift back to 1. That works perfectly well. Right after that, obviously I was trying to avoid having you play open A, because that kind of sticks out, and most of us are going to be inclined to unintentionally accent that A as well because it's on a downbeat. So again, this fingering works, but other alternatives could be do it all on the D string, 3-2-2-1. Another alternative there, you gotta be really quick, is to play the first D with a harmonic and then switch back. So after letter C, where we have this rhythm, don't be confused by that rhythm. It is notated in a very unusual way, but as you can see, he's asking you to subdivide every beat into triplets. So if you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-dum, it would basically be just as if he notated it in 12/8. But just avoid playing in this way, which is sometimes the misreading of this rhythm, is that some people will play the triplet part of the 16th notes too fast, where they'll play. Okay, so it's not that, panicked, fast, compressed version of, but it actually is. The fingering that I gave you technically works, but it's also just as practical, if not more, to go ahead and play all of the in position and then shift to the first finger on the D. You could also, if you want, play the B and the C with 1 and 2, so that it's 1, 2. If that feels more practical or more comfortable. So. Potential drawback to using that fingering of going up to the D with 1 is when you come back, you just have to make sure to release a little bit with 1 when you come back to first finger on A in first position. Not a huge problem, but just something that you need to be aware of. Don't keep the finger pressed down as you try to shift back to first finger there. Now, towards the end of all of this, the bar before D, that you go up the D string for that. And then, does that say 4? No, that does say 1. Why 1 to 2? Because of the fifth there. We don't want to have to go and pick up the first finger and reset it, but you can connect better by switching from 1 to 2 there. Otherwise, you can play that bar with the fingerings you see in parentheses down below. All in first position. I was just trying to avoid using open A there, but it's not horrible since it's just a passing 16th note there. But then we switched to the fingering, of course, for that last part. When you arrive to that chord there, I would not recommend playing everybody all three notes on the first chord coming out of, because there's just not really time to get the left hand set there. So I would just recommend that you divide that chord. Some people play the top note, other people play, and that should be a G for the middle note, and then other people play the low B. And then everybody can set for the next chord, because you have a whole basically bar, almost 2 full bars to be able to set. So you play, then set, and then you get another whole bar to set before the... After letter G, when you go back to arco on the... So just on those 8th notes, make sure that you're anticipating the second finger for the B. Letter H. This is another one of those spots where you could do a totally different fingering in some spots and it would be perfectly fine. So, like I was saying earlier, the fingering I gave you works. Since it's necessary to take a little bit of a breath after the long notes, like retake, retake, retake. So, so there, where I have the 4th finger on F sharp, I would actually say it's okay to stay in position coming out of the 16th note. So, and then on the breath, you can reset for 2. Okay. And again, 4 to 4. Yeah, you can do it. It's just not the most comfortable thing or most practical thing. So actually, just stay there, and then go to 2 on the lift after the long note. Lift and go to 2. Okay? Same thing here at the start of the bottom line. So that can be 3 and then go to 2, and then go to 2 again. I was going to suggest right at letter H also, instead of doing the printed fingering, you could actually play 1-1 at the beginning. And again, just make sure you're nice and light with 1 whenever you go between 1 to 1. And here again, 1-1 from B to C sharp. And again, the 4, not necessary there either. 2 bars before letter I, on the second half of the bar, I think I had actually marked 4-4 from G to B. Total mistake. I have no idea what happened. I'm so sorry. That should be 4-1, not 4-4. So, sorry about that. Prior to that, when you get to the high B, try not to accent that note. That's a very common thing that lots of cellists do when they get there. And that particular note can sound really harsh if it's also accented. So think a more round sound when you get there. Certainly still short, but make sure you use a good vibrato and that you just don't vertically attack it with the bow. Yeah, I think an alternative fingering to those 16th notes could be that you arrive to the B flat on the D string, but then play the 16th notes on the A, get a little bit more clarity that way. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the D string. It's certainly not wrong. It's just slightly less practical, I think, than. There we have no choice, but thankfully we're on the A string, and we get that sort of better clarity due to the fact that it's on the A string and it's a little bit brighter. So that's all good. Let's see. When we have these little iterations with all of the strings, I think, or at least the upper strings on the on that second one, I have you replace the D second finger with first, just so that that's a little bit of a cleaner exchange to get there. That's not to say it's impossible to go from D 2 to 4. I was just thinking that's a slightly more clean way to get there, of easier now to reach most of that shift, so that we don't have to get or deal with the potential of, right, but just when you play these, it's a little bit clearer also if you ever so slightly articulate with the bow in such a way that you're just in the tiniest amount shortening the second of every pair of 16th notes, so that it's, but when you play it in tempo, it's right, but not. Otherwise, I think that, especially when all the strings are playing it, that I think is a very helpful way to give that a little bit more clarity. If you wanted to, you could play some of these octaves prior to where I have marked with thumb. You could actually start thumb a little bit earlier if you wanted to. I think I didn't bother until that moment, just because it's a little bit less practical to get into thumb position there because of, maybe you could do it there on the E. You could definitely do it there. If you wanted to do the octaves with thumb from the very outset, you certainly could. So you're playing, you know, and then just switch right there. That's the hardest one, though, switching from C sharp to the E. So that's one reason why I might not advise going from thumb from the very, very beginning. Unless it happens that maybe for your left hand, just 1 to 4 is just really not comfortable to do for that length of time. But to alleviate that stress, if you are having difficulty in going, just make sure that you always, when you go from 1 to 4, let go of the first finger. So in other words, don't keep it pinned down the whole time, just 1 to 4. Right? Don't hold it down, but instead just let it go. And only press it down whenever you need it. Letter N. Yeah, my only advice for this passage is just to kind of feel a little bit more whimsical with it. Try not to stress out about the fact that you have 16th notes. They look fast, but at, you know, this ending here, really it's not that fast. So just 1, 2. Just, you know, happy-go-lucky. Just, it's all kind of more laid back. It doesn't have to be a stressful thing at all. Just be careful there with the open A. Since you're playing G sharp, you have to get it out of the way very soon, otherwise your A won't speak. See how I just now didn't get it to speak. This is just a bow control thing with making sure that your bow gets to the A string ahead of time. The last group of 16th notes that you have at the very end of the piece, 3 lines from the bottom of the page on the... So the fingering that I gave you originally was designed to alleviate the shift from 4 to 1. Since you're up higher, then that position change there is a little bit easier to do at this really fast tempo. But it also did occur to me that it's maybe, perhaps for some, practical also to actually start the passage with 4, and then you shift to 2 on the B again, and then shift back up, coming here to C sharp with 1. So you could do it that way. It seems equally navigable with the left hand to... Just a practice tip maybe for this is to do a lot of rhythmic practicing. So you do... And then also the opposite.